$32 million. That's what happens when you spend for decades refusing to quit. Kathy Bates didn't become a household name overnight. She became a legend the slow way, through to decades of near misses, stolen scenes, and thankless roles that nobody else wanted. And then one morning in 1991, she walked up to the Oscar podium and changed everything. But here's what makes her story genuinely fascinating. The Oscar wasn't the peak. For most actors, winning the Academy Award is the summit of the mountain. For Kathy Bates, it was base camp. What she built afterward, through shrewd television moves, production partnerships, and a deliberate pivot that most Hollywood veterans are too proud to make, is the real story, the $32 million story. So how does a character actress from Memphis, Tennessee, with no industry connections and no conventional leading lady looks, end up as one of the most financially secure and artistically respected performers of her generation? What did she know that her contemporaries didn't? And what can anyone, inside or outside Hollywood, actually learn from the way she played her hand? That's exactly what we're going to break down today. We're going to walk through every phase of Kathy Bates's career, from her scrappy theater days in New York to her game-changing run on American Horror Story, to the production deals and back-end arrangements that quietly padded that $32 million figure while she was busy collecting Emmy nominations. By the time we're done, you'll understand not just what Kathy Bates achieved, but precisely how she achieved it, and why her blueprint might be the smartest long-game strategy in the modern entertainment industry. Kathleen Doyle Bates was born on June 28, 1948, in Memphis, Tennessee, making her a Cancer, a sign astrologers associate with emotional depth, tenacity, and a fierce protective instinct. Whether you put stock in that or not, those three qualities would prove to be the defining pillars of her professional life. Her father, Langdon Doyle Bates, worked as a mechanical engineer, and her mother, Bertie Talbot Bates, was a homemaker. They were solidly middle class, not wealthy, not desperate, the kind of family where practicality was prized and artistic ambition was viewed with gentle skepticism at best. Kathy was the youngest of three daughters, and birth order theorists would have a field day with her trajectory. Youngest children are often the ones who develop humor and charisma as social survival tools, who learn to read a room early, and who feel both the freedom of lower parental expectations and the pressure of proving themselves on their own terms. Whether or not that framework applies perfectly to Bates, it's undeniable that she grew up with a performer's instinct, an ability to inhabit a moment, to make people feel something. Memphis in the 1950s and early 1960s was a city alive with creative energy. The music scene was obviously extraordinary, but theater was also a significant cultural presence, and young Kathy absorbed it. She's spoken in interviews about early trips to the theater with her family, and the almost electric sensation of watching a live performance, the immediacy of it, the way you couldn't look away. That feeling planted a seed that no amount of practical discouragement could kill. At White Station High School in Memphis, Bates threw herself into drama and performance. She wasn't the most conventionally glamorous student. She knew that from early on, but she had something that transcended conventional glamour. She could make an audience believe her. Teachers noticed, more importantly, Bates noticed that teachers noticed, and that small kernel of external validation became fuel for a much larger fire. She went on to Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas, where she studied theater arts and graduated in 1969. SMU's theater program was, and remains, one of the more rigorous academic drama programs in the American South, and it gave Bates a technical foundation that would serve her for decades. The training wasn't just about acting technique, it was about stamina, discipline, and the ability to sustain a performance night after night in a way that film and television work sometimes doesn't demand. Bates would carry that stage-trained durability into every medium she entered. Her parents' reaction to her career ambitions was supportive, but cautious, as might be expected from a practical engineering family in mid-century Tennessee. There was no industry connection to leverage, no uncle at a talent agency, no family friend who knew someone in New York. What Kathy Bates had when she left SMU in 1969 was training, determination, and a bus ticket. That was it. And for the next decades, that would have to be enough. The New York theater world that Kathy Bates entered in the late 1960s and early 1970s was simultaneously thrilling and brutal. Off-Broadway was experiencing one of its most creatively explosive periods: experimental work, new playwrights, challenging subject matter, but it was also an ecosystem of profound financial precarity. Bates worked. She worked constantly, in tiny theaters, in readings, in workshops, in productions that closed after 3 performances. She waited tables. She worked as a singing waitress at a restaurant, a job that required both the thick skin of a service worker and the performance chops to entertain customers who hadn't necessarily come to be entertained. The audition circuit in New York in that era was a particular kind of entrance test. Hundreds of actors competing for every role, callbacks that led nowhere, casting directors who made decisions based on type and physical presentation in ways that consistently worked against someone like Bates. She was talented, extraordinarily so, but she didn't fit the ingenue mold, and the industry in the 1970s was still largely organized around that mold. She faced rejection on a scale that would have ended the careers of less determined people before they truly began. What kept her going was the stage. Off-Broadway and regional theater kept recognizing what film and television were slower to see. She built a genuine reputation in the New York theater community, not as a star, but as a performer you could trust absolutely, one who brought intelligence and emotional honesty to every role she took. That reputation was slow to build and easy to underestimate, but it was real and it was durable. Her Broadway journey was marked by a moment of almost operatic irony that deserves its own chapter in Hollywood history. In 1983, Kathy Bates originated the role of Lenny in Beth Henley's Crimes of the Heart on Broadway, a role she helped shape and define from the ground up. The play was critically acclaimed. Bates was celebrated. And then, when the film adaptation was made in 1986, the role went to Diane Keaton. The part Bates had essentially created for the stage, the part that had been hers in every meaningful artistic sense, was handed to a bigger name for the screen version. It was the kind of professional disappointment that tests character at its very core. She kept going. She had to. The alternative was returning to Memphis with her theatrical training and her near misses and building a different kind of life entirely. And that wasn't something Kathy Bates was built to do. Television work came in fits and starts during the 1980s. Guest appearances, small roles, the kind of work that pays the bills and keeps you technically active without building the profile that leads to larger opportunities. She was working. She just wasn't breaking through, not yet. And then came the script for Misery. When Stephen King's novel Misery was adapted for the screen, director Rob Reiner needed someone to play Annie Wilkes, arguably one of the most demanding villain roles in American cinema. Annie had to be terrifying without being cartoonish. She had to inspire genuine dread while also generating, at moments, a kind of uncomfortable sympathy. She had to carry enormous stretches of the film, usually alone with James Caan, and she had to be entirely believable as a former nurse, an obsessive fan, and a calculating monster. It was a role that required an actor of extraordinary range and technical precision. The studio reportedly wanted a bigger name. There were conversations about other actresses with greater box office recognition. But Rob Reiner and his casting team kept coming back to Kathy Bates, who had read for the part and demonstrated something that couldn't be manufactured, a complete, lived-in, terrifyingly authentic understanding of who Annie Wilkes was. Bates prepared for the role with the rigor of a stage actor, taking on a complex classical part. She studied the psychology of obsessive behavior. She worked through Annie's internal logic, the genuine love for Paul Sheldon that coexists with the capacity for monstrous violence, and found a way to make both things true simultaneously. The result was one of the most fully realized performances in American film. Misery was released in November 1990. It was a commercial success, earning approximately $61 million at the domestic box office against a production budget of around $20 million. But the cultural impact went far beyond the box office. The performance was immediately recognized as something special. Critics used words like indelible and unforgettable, and the awards community began paying very close attention. On March 25, 1991, Kathy Bates won the Academy Award for Best Actress for her performance in Misery. She was 42 years old. She had been working professionally for over 2 decades. The win was, by any measure, overdue, but the timing proved to be, in retrospect, almost perfect. Bates was mature enough to handle sudden, extreme attention without being destabilized by it. She understood what the Oscar meant and, more importantly, what it didn't mean. It was a door, not a destination. What most people don't know is that the Oscar win didn't transform Kathy Bates into a conventional leading lady overnight. Hollywood wasn't suddenly offering her romantic lead roles in big-budget studio pictures. The industry's biases around age and physicality didn't evaporate because she had a gold statue. What the Oscar did was give her leverage, and Bates was smart enough to use that leverage strategically rather than desperately. The roles that followed Misery were consistently strong character parts, about Schmidt opposite Jack Nicholson, Fried Green Tomatoes, Primary Colors, Titanic, that remarkable small role as the unsinkable Molly Brown that earned her a Golden Globe nomination. She accumulated a filmography of genuinely impressive work, collecting award nominations and critical respect at a rate that few character actors ever achieve. Each role added to the brand of Kathy Bates, fearless, technically immaculate, capable of anything. Her salary progression through the 1990s reflected her rising status. Post-Misery, she commanded fees in the range of $1 to $2 million per picture for major studio productions, not the $20 million territory of the era's biggest stars, but respectable and growing. Her approach to project selection was notably intelligent. She chose work based on quality of material and caliber of collaborators, rather than chasing franchise opportunities or purely commercial considerations. That artistic integrity cost her certain paydays in the short term, but built a reputation that would generate income for decades. The early 2000s brought a remarkable stretch of work that demonstrated her range in almost systematic fashion. She played comedic roles that showcased an underutilized gift for timing. She played supporting parts in major films with grace and specificity. She continued doing theater when the right opportunity presented itself, maintaining the live performance muscles that had carried her through the lean years. By the mid-2000s, Kathy Bates was one of the most respected character performers in the industry, and she was about to make the strategic pivot that would prove to be her most financially significant career decision. Here's where it gets really interesting. In 2011, Ryan Murphy, the creator of Glee and the architect of one of the most distinctive brands in contemporary television, cast Kathy Bates in American Horror Story, Coven. The decision would prove transformative for both parties. American Horror Story was, by 2013, when Coven aired, already a cultural phenomenon. Murphy's anthology format, each season a self-contained story with a rotating cast, was genuinely innovative and attracted viewers who might not typically watch horror programming. The show also attracted actors of extraordinary caliber who were drawn to Murphy's willingness to create complex, often outrageous, deeply human characters. Bates's performance as Madame Delphine Lalaurie in Coven was an immediate critical sensation. The role required her to play a real historical figure, a notoriously sadistic 19th-century New Orleans socialite, with a kind of dark, comedy-inflected horror that demanded precisely the blend of tonal awareness and technical fearlessness that Bates had been developing for 4 decades. She was astonishing. The Emmy nomination that followed was not a surprise. But the deeper strategic significance of her television pivot was financial. Premium cable and later streaming changed the economics of acting in ways that benefited established performers enormously. A series' regular role on a prestige television production provided something that film work rarely does: sustained, reliable income over multiple seasons, combined with residual structures that could generate passive income for years. Bates embraced the anthology television model with evident enthusiasm, returning to American Horror Story in multiple seasons, Hotel, Roanoke, Apocalypse, double feature, each time bringing a completely different character to life. Each return demonstrated that her relationship with Murphy's universe was a genuine creative partnership rather than a single transaction. She won an Emmy Award for American Horror Story Hotel in 2016, adding to her Oscar and cementing her status as one of a tiny group of performers to have won both. The television pivot also opened doors to other premium television work. Her role as Harriet in the Hulu series Disjointed, a Netflix comedy, subsequently showed range in yet another direction. The point was constant, productive motion, never settling into a single register, never allowing the industry to fully categorize her, always expanding the field of what Kathy Bates was understood to be capable of. The production side of her career also deserves attention. While not operating a production company at the scale of some of her contemporaries, Bates has been involved in developing and championing projects in ways that generate producing credits and associated income. The trend in Hollywood toward talent-attached production, where an actor's involvement as a producer adds both creative control and financial upside, has been particularly valuable for performers of Bates's stature who have relationships and reputations that studios and streaming platforms genuinely value. Her real estate history reflects steady, intelligent accumulation rather than dramatic speculation. She has owned property in Los Angeles for decades, with holdings that have appreciated significantly through multiple real estate cycles. Her investment approach appears consistent with her professional approach: disciplined, quality-focused, oriented toward long-term value rather than short-term flash. The broader financial picture that produces the $32 million net worth estimate reflects several overlapping streams. Acting fees from film and television, accumulated over 5 decades of consistent work. Residual and syndication income from an extraordinarily deep catalog that includes major studio films, streaming programming, and network television. Producing fees from development and production activities, real estate appreciation, and the kind of steady and spectacular compounding that happens when someone earns significant money over a long period and manages it with basic intelligence. What's notable about Bates's financial trajectory, compared to many of her contemporaries, is the absence of the dramatic reversals, the bankruptcy filings, the business disasters, the legal settlements that have punctuated the financial biographies of performers who earned far more than she did at their respective peaks. Bates appears to have approached money with the same quality she brings to performance. No wasted effort, no unnecessary risk, a fundamental respect for the craft. As of early 2025, Kathy Bates remains active across multiple fronts. Her ongoing relationship with Ryan Murphy's creative universe has produced a continuing stream of projects and public attention. She has spoken candidly in recent years about her experiences with lymphedema, a condition she developed following cancer treatment, and has become an important public voice on health issues that affect millions of people, a form of advocacy that is both personally meaningful and broadly respected. Her approach to the press and public life has evolved over the decades into something admirably calibrated. She is accessible enough to maintain public warmth and engagement while clearly maintaining genuine privacy around the aspects of her life she chooses not to share. The social media presence she maintains is characteristically authentic, self-deprecating in the best sense, engaged with fans, promotional without being relentless. On the creative front, Bates has expressed consistent interest in continuing to work in ways that challenge her and serve meaningful stories. She has discussed directorial aspirations in interviews over the years, and given the precedent set by other actors of her generation who have moved successfully behind the camera, that aspiration remains plausible and perhaps increasingly likely. The combination of her performance experience, her industry relationships, and her demonstrated story instincts would make her a formidable director. Her legacy as an advocate for performers who don't fit conventional Hollywood casting molds is perhaps her most enduring contribution to the industry's culture. Bates has spoken publicly and consistently about the way physical appearance constraints limit the range of stories Hollywood tells and the performers it empowers to tell them. Her own career is, in the most practical sense, the most effective possible argument against those limitations. You cannot watch what she's built: the Oscar, the Emmy, the $32 million, the 50-plus year career of genuine creative achievement, and maintain that conventional casting wisdom serves the industry's best interests. She has also been notably generous in her support of younger performers navigating the same obstacles she faced earlier in her career. The mentorship and advocacy work she does largely outside the public eye reflects a genuine commitment to changing the conditions that made her own journey unnecessarily difficult. What does the Kathy Bates story actually teach us? Let's be specific about this, because there are real lessons here that go beyond the generic inspirational narrative of perseverance paying off. First, the value of sustained craft development over the pursuit of immediate recognition. Bates spent 20 years building technical abilities on the stage that she was then able to deploy to extraordinary effect when the right opportunity finally arrived. The Oscar-winning performance in Misery wasn't a happy accident. It was the product of thousands of hours of work that no one was watching and no one was paying her much to do. The lesson isn't just don't give up. It's use the waiting time to become better. Second, the strategic value of medium flexibility. Bates's willingness to move between film, television, and stage when each made creative and financial sense gave her a career resilience that actors who disdained any particular medium simply didn't develop. The performers who treated television as beneath them in the 1970s and 1980s missed enormous opportunities. The performers who treated prestige cable and streaming beneath them in the 2000s and 2010s made the same mistake. Bates never made that mistake. She went where the good work was. Third, the compounding power of reputation. Every professional commitment Bates honored, every role she delivered fully, every director she served with complete investment added to a professional reputation that ultimately generated opportunities no amount of pure ambition could have manufactured. Reputation in the film industry is the real economic asset, and Bates spent decades building one with extraordinary care. Fourth, health advocacy as legacy building. Her public engagement with her own health challenges, the breast cancer, the lymphedema, transformed personal difficulty into meaningful public service. That transformation reflects a kind of character that is genuinely rare and genuinely admirable. For anyone navigating a creative career, in entertainment or elsewhere, the Bates model is worth serious study. It's not the model of explosive early success that dominates most celebrity narratives. It's a model of sustainable, cumulative achievement built on discipline, flexibility, and an unwillingness to define professional value in terms that the marketplace is willing to impose from outside. So let's bring it home. 50-plus years of professional work. 1 Academy Award, 1 Emmy Award, dozens of Golden Globe, SAG, and Critics' Choice nominations. A filmography that includes some of the most significant American films of the last 4 decades. A television legacy that helped define the possibilities of prestige anthology drama. And a net worth of approximately $32 million that reflects not a single lucky break, but a half-century of intelligent, persistent, high-quality work. The $32 million isn't the most remarkable thing about Kathy Bates. The most remarkable thing that she built it the hard way, the right way, without compromising the creative integrity that made her worth watching in the first place. In an industry that regularly produces tragic stories of talent squandered and potential unrealized, she built something durable and true. That's the Kathy Bates story. Not a fairy tale, not a cautionary tale. A blueprint, imperfect, hard one, and genuinely instructive for anyone willing to study it seriously. What's your favorite Kathy Bates performance? Drop it in the comments. I want to know whether you're a misery devotee, an Oz obsessive, or someone who thinks her work in About Schmidt is criminally underrated. And if you found this breakdown valuable, subscribe for more deep dives into the financial strategies and career architectures behind Hollywood's most interesting long-game success stories. Next week, we're going deep on another actor whose net worth tells a story their filmography alone doesn't fully explain.